I wasn't the best student during university time, but I had to be open-minded and flexible in any challenge I could face, including the final year project, which is why in this video, I'm going to save your time by telling you all what I needed to excel or to develop a final year project from A all the way to Z. Always for me, the biggest difficulty to start a project or to start anything complicated is how to start it. You don't know where to go. You always want to figure out the best way that you could start in doing something. I also wasn't even sure, what does a typical project have? Do we start with an introduction, body, conclusion, like the intermediate or elementary schools? Or there is a more specific way of writing introduction and a specific way to write a body or a conclusion. So after thinking how to get a perfect project with a perfect start and with everything perfect, I lost 2 or 3 days. And the deadline of the first progress report was within 1 week or 2 weeks. I was doomed in a nutshell. But later on, when I thought about I should just start doing something without even thinking where's the best solution, I tackled the 3 researching tools that I explained in this video, but specifically focused on Scopus. I saw the articles that are related to how to start a project, or just in general, a certain project done successfully. What does it include? And then found out that they always start with abstract. And after I searched about what does abstract mean, because I was a very beginner in writing projects or writing reports, even though I was about to graduate. Imagine that. Abstract should include project objective, project description in 1 or 2 sentences, and then the most important thing, the project results. They are the results that will benefit you and your team, that will benefit your field, and will benefit the society if it is a very successful project. So you should really emphasize on every single result you found in the abstract to make it attractive to the people when they see it. I kept looking at different abstracts published inside Scopus itself, collected some of the articles that attracted me, and then found out the common thing between all of them is that they start always with literature review. It is a brief intro to project importance. And then one article attracted me in its literature review. They talked about the impact of the product in the society. They started with it immediately. This is what will attract people to read the literature review, and to make it even more convincing that we will need it in the future. Always talk money, guys, always. We want a production of this because it is really helping us in our life, so the prices will continue to rise up in order to buy this always and always. And then start talking about the previous findings. What did people do before you? Let's say that you developed a chocolate recipe. You would start looking at the people before you. What did they do to produce their chocolate? So after you gather all the recipes together, you start searching about the gap. What is there for me left to do to come up with my own patent, to develop a new recipe for chocolate that people in the future may need it because it is, for example, easier, less expensive, less time to produce it. This is what I mean by reading about the previous findings. What did people do before you to find the gap, to find the thing that they didn't do, and then you develop it into something that is very unique and representing yourself. The things that I said so far just include the literature review, but then the second section, which is the most important section, is the project description. The hook that you will start with in the project description. In case if you didn't know, hook is the thing that we start with to attract people, or the thing that I just did in this video, the hook that I used in the beginning of this video. You will add an attractive word or attractive words that your customer really struggles with, and then you mention that your project is the solution. Then you will explain the process, and then you will specify what is the gap in the project description. And imagine if it saves one of the cost or time. Your project will really stand out, not just as a student, but also as a project engineer, for example, or a project in your field. And speaking of time, we need to conduct also what we call profit margin, because a profit margin will determine if your project worth investigation or not. If you find that the project margin ratio or a percentage is higher than 50%, or just the higher it is, the greater the project is, then people will find reason to continue reading your project to the end. Because, oh, look at this profit margin, it is high, so the process worth investigation. We need to read about it and then find out, is really what he's saying or what she's saying true or not. Then you start talking numbers. calculations, but the results itself need to be fancy. And if you know me well, I'm a lazy person in general, and I want to find whatever that will help me do my thing just faster than if I did it alone. I completely forget the I can do it alone mindset and focus on what are the things that are so far there for me to use to shorten my time and cause me to have more efficiency in my project or in my life in general. Whether engineering or not, there will always be programs that will make your life easy, that will make complex calculations and complex operations to find numbers that lead to conclusion. Because even if the person who is reading the article has the same major as yourself, you still don't want to cause him or cause her headache, which is why I used MATLAB to develop 5 or 6 equations together and then solve them. The duration that will take me to solve it by hand will take just 1 semester or 1 year. It just solve it by seconds, people. And this is the important thing of using the technology so far that you have to fasten your method of calculation, whether you are an engineer or not. You can even plot the numbers to visualize the effect and to better come up with a conclusion about this project. So we have no excuse. To better understand the idea, I will give you example. So far, the pictures that I showed you, it's just all about my scenery design project. But now I will talk specific a little bit about what we call a transalkylator reactor. I said before that it will be adiabatic, so there will be no heat. And then I specifically explained or proved using a graph and then really see the effect. Will it be adiabatic or not? And it proved that the change is not that high. The reactor itself is not sensitive to temperature, so we can assume that it is adiabatic. So with a graph or with a plot, you can convince people and you can convince yourself. And of course, the graph was developed using MATLAB. I didn't use it myself, or otherwise it will take a 1 year duration. Furthermore, it would be amazing if the conclusion can save time. This is what I did using a graph, using a MATLAB. From 3 meter cube to 23 meter cube, the product flow, the thing that I wanted, will not change, will be the same flow, whether you have a big reactor or a small reactor. So why don't you just make it 3 or 5 meter cube? It will save cost. And it will save the operating and the capital cost of the reactor. Always talk money, guys. So within the project description, you convinced yourself and you convinced your team. But how to make it reliable? What makes the numbers that I found and the conclusions trustworthy? And for that, we use a validation method. Validation will give trust to your report, to your project. People will trust it. They will see numbers, they will be attracted, and then they will say, wait, how can I make sure that your numbers are right? Are you fooling us or not? It's too good to be true. So for that, we have to use a program that is really trustworthy. Aspen Plus. Whatever I found using by hand solution for a very small problem, not very complicated like what I showed you earlier, I made it trustworthy using Aspen Plus. So when I showed them that, oh, Aspen Plus made the results similar to my results, but by 3 or 2% margin of error, they will say, okay, we can trust you and you can trust the numbers. It's worth mentioning that the way to validate your results is not just only by program. Also, an instructor who published a lot of papers can validate your results. An organization can validate your numbers. So anything that is not biased. Now we come to economics. You see, the profit margin tells you that the project is worth investigation. But what are the costs that required me to build a certain reactor that provided me these numbers that led me to conclusions? As a chemical engineer, I needed to consider what we call the capital cost, which is how much for me it will take to build a chemical plant or a physical plant. And I needed to know the operating cost, which is how much it would take for me to operate this chemical or physical plant. So I needed to calculate the cost of each one of them. I'm not gonna bother you because this video is for all of us who are in a final year project, but know that in each field you have economic variables that you need to consider in order to find numbers that will lead you to conclusions. These problems that will cause us a lot of headache, if we consider them now, we will not be killing our project later on. Because imagine if you are excellent at what you're doing, but at the expense of having high cost, or at the expense of having much time to operate something, or at the expense of damaging people around you. It is not fair for you to work a lot of time, and then you found out that your project will be killed later on because of some 1 or 2 things that you didn't consider. That is not related to your field, but it is related to you as a human being. Now, one could ask me, we are at certain stage that will not require us to think a lot of things right now. I will say yes, but if you think about it right now, then you will save a lot of time in the future. Because later on, when you get your chance to work as an employee, you will develop projects with people, and yes, true, they will teach you and they will guide you step by step, but you will always work by thinking about the common thing. I don't want that, and you don't want that. We don't want to be normal people. Develop a life or death mindset so that people, when looking at you later on, they wouldn't say, this man or this woman is new, so we expect them to do this and this. You then will think, the experts expect me to do at this level only. You will develop a limitation to yourself. You won't be able to be the person who is excellent or not normal person. And this is not the thing that I like, and you of course don't want that. I focused on giving advice and I forget the conclusion part. The last thing is the project conclusion. You will give the results of each section in terms of the literature review, project description, and the economics. You will restate specifically the results that you concluded, the numbers that led you to conclusion, the graphs that help you to understand or to give successful results of the project. Then if you wish to do something but you couldn't because of the time maybe or the difficulty of the circumstances, then you add a recommendation section that include the things that could have improved the project performance or the project results. I said it multiple times, but I will say it again. A tip that should never be forgotten before and during the project and during your life as well. Think money and think business. Remember and believe me, even though I'm not the expert, but I know that the world does not want your skill. They want the results that came using your skill. They want to know that the results you found will help them in their lives and in their fields. So always consider people's point of view, not only just yourself. Just an update before I finish the video. I will post every week like before, but it is more likely going to be every Sunday or every Monday. So I will change. Before I was posting every Saturday. I hope I'm thinking in people's point of view, not just my point of view. And still, if there is something as usual, just contact me in the comments or in the email, and I will respond to you as fast as I can. I hope you have a wonderful day.